Hey everybody, this is Miss Smith. Last week you worked on a text called the bicycle gearhead, and this activity was about annotation and then using annotation to provide your text evidence in a writing assignment. This is going to be a really important skill this year, so we want to make sure that you see the process from beginning to end and know what it is that you'll need to do in future assignments like this one. So the first thing you were asked to do was to read this text, the bicycle gearhead. So take a minute right now, let's hit pause and take a minute to quickly just skim back over this article. Hit pause and do that now. All right, so hopefully you just skimmed back through this article. It's written from the point of view of a guy. It's in first person. Look, it says, I come, I too. So it's written in first person, and it's written by a guy who used to love to work on cars, and then he got into the bicycle business. All right, so you were supposed to read the text, and then you were going to do some annotation, and you had specific instructions for your annotation. Anytime you have questions to answer, it's a great idea to use those questions to guide your annotation. Annotation shouldn't be something that you're just doing just to mark things blindly. You should be annotating based on what you're going to have to do with the text. So this activity led you through the parts that I knew that you were going to have to use in the final assignment, which was this writing assignment, to explain how and why the writer got involved with the bicycle business. So, back up to the first steps. All right, so number one said, underline the part of the text that defines what a gearhead is. I've done that here as an example. I come from a long line of gearheads, and then right here is that definition. People obsessed with new gadgets or working on mechanical devices. Then the next question, underline the part of the text that explains why the writer switched from working on cars to working on bicycles. I bet you and I underlined some of the same parts here. This is what I underlined. Why did he switch from cars to bicycles? Because cars had made him uneasy. He adored them, but he knew that they weren't good for the environment. All right, so the next question asked about the use of the word enlightened, and it says to underline the part of the paragraph that provides a clue to the meaning of enlightened, because he said he was enlightened. And right before it, it says he found it, and that's a reference to working on bicycles. He found that it was just as fun as fixing cars. I was enlightened, he said. So I think this is the part that he was referring to. This is how he was enlightened. He sort of went, oh my gosh, wow, I can have just as much fun on bicycles as cars. So anyway, that's the way it goes back and forth from the instructions for the annotation to what was marked. Now normally you wouldn't have instructions for annotation, but what you would probably have is the question. We were going through this process step by step this time, but normally you would have this question, which again is, using some or all of the text evidence, write a paragraph explaining how and why the writer got involved with the bicycle business. And then there are instructions here that say to use that text evidence that it says you have to use. You can paraphrase, which just means put it in your own words, or you can use quotations. We have to be sure if we use quotations that we mark those with question marks. So I made myself a student here and wrote this answer. The first thing I did was use part of the question as part of my first sentence. That's a great way to start a written answer, is to look at the question and say, what am I being asked to answer? How can I use that in my first sentence? So here it said, why, explain how and why the writer got involved with the bicycle business. So I came here and I used the exact words, the writer. The writer of this text got involved in the bicycle business. See how that comes straight from the question? why the writer got involved in the bicycle business. All right, so I said the writer of this text got involved in the bicycle business because he was a gearhead who loved cars, but he knew that cars were not good for the environment. So this is a really important place to point something out. The fact that cars aren't good for the environment, that wasn't my number one thing that I underlined. It was actually the number two. It was the second thing that I underlined. He knew that cars weren't good for the environment, but it just made sense to use that first to answer that question of how or why did the writer get involved in the bicycle business. So I can't just do it as a formula. I need to think about the question and use the part of the text that makes sense to answer the question. And this annotation right here, cars made me a bit uneasy. I knew cars were not good for the environment. This is the best part that directly answers the question that I've been asked to answer. How or why did the writer get involved in the bicycle business? So again, I used that bit of text evidence. Not good for the environment. Let's go back up here and look again. I know this is probably making you dizzy, but back up here and look again. Not good for the environment. So I took that bit of text evidence directly from what I had underlined. Not good for the environment. And then I thought, well, this is a good place to explain what a gearhead is. A gearhead is someone who is obsessed with new gadgets or working on mechanical devices. That came from my first bit of underlined text. Obsessed with new gadgets or working on mechanical devices. So first I answered the question. The writer got involved with bicycles because cars weren't good for the environment. Then I wanted to provide some explanation about what this idea of a gearhead was, so I used that. And then I needed to connect this first part with some of the other text I had, like the idea that he was enlightened. Because remember, we're still answering the question, why? Why did he get involved in the bicycle business? So when the writer realized that he could apply his love for mechanical devices to bicycles, he was enlightened. I put quotation marks around that because it came straight from the text, because he realized that he could still be a gearhead. So I'm connecting this part up here to what made him happy. He realized that he could still be a gearhead, but in a different way by working on bicycles, which are good for the environment. And then I thought about, the question asked how or why did he get involved in the bicycle business? And I felt like part of that was because he could have a successful business. And this came from the question about why people in Seattle ride their bikes. So I had underlined this. They are eco-friendly, they're affordable, they have health benefits. So I used that information in this last part of my answer. Now the writer is able to work in a successful business that he feels good about, and he works in a place where people like bicycles for, straight out of the text here, their affordability, their health benefit, the health benefits of bicycling, and the sheer joy of riding one on a beautiful day. So notice I didn't use everything. I had annotated. I decided some of it didn't need to be used in order to answer the question, which was this: write a paragraph explaining how and why the writer got involved with the bicycle business. So that was my question. I followed these instructions, and this was the paragraph I ended up with by using some of my own words and text evidence from the original text. I hope that helps you see how you get from annotation to answering a question, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.